Welcome to EPG Pathshala. My name is Dr. Poonam Gulalia. I am faculty with the Tata Institute of Social Sciences. The paper that is being discussed is titled Fieldwork and Field Supervision, and the module which I am going to discuss with you today is titled Learning Spaces. The objectives with which this module has been designed is as follows. 1. To enable the student to learn of the various learning spaces available in the field. 2. To enable the student to understand the importance of the learning spaces in fieldwork. 3. To enable the student to know the scope of these learning spaces at various places through case studies. And 4th, to enable the student to become aware of the various skills that can be utilized in these learning spaces. The concept of learning space is within a framework for understanding the connection between student learning approaches and the field learning environment. Learning spaces are seen as a holistic space to understand not just the result of cognition, but the functioning of the student's thinking, the feelings the student has in the field, the perceptions that he or she develops, and the behaviors that he or she undertakes in those learning spaces. It prepares students to be competent social workers, to be able to perform their professional tasks, and to also learn in the process. These spaces are best facilitated by a process that draws out the best of the students' beliefs and ideas about a particular situation, about a particular problem, about a particular concern, whether it's an individual client, a group, or a community setting, all of which can be examined, tested, and integrated with new and more refined ideas, and also help them to learn, unlearn, and relearn. It is through these learning spaces that students are able to work with actual clients, interact with experienced social work staff and other professionals, and learn to develop various skills through contact with clients, peers, and also through role models. The students are expected to learn every practical aspect in their 2 years postgraduate program in order to acquire an understanding of the principles of the profession, the policies and the processes that constitute the profession of the social work. There are largely 3 learning spaces which are going to be discussed today: the fieldwork setting, the agency setting, and supervision. The spaces of fieldwork learning are based on and also are related to its functions, which are spread out throughout the process of supervision, right from the orientation program to the end of the year fieldwork. Attempts are made by supervisors to help students to attain the necessary skills and utilize these learning spaces adequately. The steps and tools are important because they help in attaining the educational goals of fieldwork. All the tools help to learn self-reflection, personal development through discussions at individual level or in a larger group. What is the nature of learning spaces? Experiential learning is a process which links education and personal development. Therefore, field learning is also known as learning through doing. It is a skill-oriented process, and education is imparted within very broad perspectives. In addition, it fosters the development of the intellect, the emotional process and attitudes, and also helps blend theory with practice, besides combining philosophy with action and integrating the understanding about people with the various methods of helping them. Practice learning plays a key role in the theories of human behavior and development, and it is best conceived as a process and not merely as an outcome. To improve learning in the field through the various spaces, it is essential for the student to understand that the primary focus continues to remain on engaging students in a process that best enhances their learning, a process that includes feedback on the effectiveness of their own learning efforts. While working in the field, the student comes across various dilemmas, conflicts, differences of opinion, and disagreement, and all of these are addressed in the learning spaces. It is in these spaces that the student is called upon to move back and forth between opposing modes of action and reflection, feeling and thinking, conceptualizing and experimentation. Learning requires a dialectical approach towards adapting to situations and people. The fieldwork setting is the primary setting where student is placed for fieldwork. These could be based on the thematic area of health, mental health, livelihood, community setting, or institutional setting. Under these areas, the students could be placed either in a government institution, in a children's home, in a daycare center, in a community center, in prison setting, in police stations, or in social service departments. They could be placed either in an urban setting, a rural setting, or a tribal setting. Now, whatever be the setting, the student is assigned to work with individuals facing challenges, or with groups, or with community members, and provide assistance or help to them becomes the task of the student social worker. The student has the backup of the agency or the project staff to help him play his student role. But the fact remains that the learning spaces which has been provided to him or her should be adequately utilized so that they can combine their classroom-based learning with the learning by doing. Therefore, fieldwork is regarded as the missing link between theory and professional practice. The entire process seems to resemble a theatrical rehearsal as students are gradually prepared to play the role of future social workers. The field learning for students relates to their personal development as well as to their professional development. It is in these practice settings that we see the contribution of students' personal development in a number of ways. Through the fieldwork experiences, students come into direct contact with or interact with different categories of individuals and groups, sometimes with paraprofessionals and sometimes with professionals from other disciplines. All of them have very different personalities, may come from very different cultures and carry different philosophies, and therefore the student learner needs to utilize this learning space to grow and learn. Social work students have a hands-on approach, and it is through formal and informal learning that the student can understand the cultural, the social, the political, or the historical context in which fieldwork takes place, as well as the person providing this type of learning to the student. Fieldwork learning space is never a neutral space and is invariably linked with the ethics and influenced by social positioning both in the field and in the person. The field gives a scope to learn about the social positioning of the person, and the experiences of learning opportunities enable the student to shape his or her own identity, leading him or her to a different knowledge and understanding of their own realities. It is essential that learning takes place and students utilize it for professional development, as it remains one of the integral components of assessment and evaluation. In particular, learning for and learning through development requires a professional work environment which is provided by agencies and placement settings. It helps students to build a competent and ethical professional self in real life situations. In order to explain what we mean by this field setting learning spaces, and in order to take a case study, I would like to take the example of an outreach program of a community health center of a government hospital, wherein the focus of intervention and learning for a student social worker is highlighted. There are many such outreach programs which are undertaken by government hospitals in order to serve the community members which are in the vicinity of the hospital. It is in these outreach programs that a trainee social worker can be provided the following learning opportunities. 1. A student could utilize it for health promotion of a target group identified from the community. 2. A student could focus on clinical care, immunization of children or antenatal care. 3rd, it could encourage you to enable the development of a children's group or a youth group. 4th, you could focus on the empowerment of women in the community. 5th, it could also help facilitate communal harmony if you are working with a heterogeneous community. 6th, it could help you as a student learner to introduce certain income generation activities or vocational programs in collaboration with some other organization and help some of the youth or the adolescents inculcate business skills in the process. And lastly, it could encourage you to enable the target groups to learn about saving and finance. There are a range of activities which you can undertake as has been highlighted to you in the first case study, where your own initiative, enterprise will be taken into account and your own perseverance will be tested in enabling the community and the target groups to meet the basic needs and requirements. Taking another case study of an organization which works in the field of prevention of drug and substance abuse, one would need to highlight the fact that this is an organization which, besides working for prevention of substance abuse, also works towards treatment and rehabilitations of drug users. And the following services are provided by this organization. Firstly, detoxification, correction and rehabilitation for drug dependence. Second service provided by the organization is individual counseling to drug users and group therapy for addicts and their support families. Thirdly, they also organize preventive programs in the workplace. Fourthly, they undertake community-based programs to create awareness and prevention of substance abuse among the youngsters. And lastly, they work on life skill enhancement programs for children at risk. If these are the services provided by the agency, and this is one such setting where you would be placed for fieldwork, you would be required to be sensitive to the target group, to understand the services provided by the agency, to work towards your own biases and prejudices if they exist, and to enable the agency staff to meet its objectives. All these spaces provide excellent learning opportunities for students who are placed in this given thematic area. It is essential to note that, as mentioned earlier, field placements are very many and thematic areas are also as many as possible. Sometimes students feel diffident or wary of being placed in institutions which relate with mental health. However, a case study is being highlighted here to enable you, to sensitize you to these concerns which are becoming more and more prevalent in our society. Field placements in organizations which work with mental health are challenging, no doubt, and they require students to work in a multidisciplinary team. In a particular agency named S for confidentiality, which works in the area of crisis intervention, community outreach, and referrals, students could learn and grow as professionals. What are the opportunities which could be provided to students in a rehabilitation center in an agency S? The first is that you could follow up with the families in question with an emphasis on client medication. This is a clinical setting, so you would be required to take case histories, undertake clinical information on a data sheet, and undertake an overview of the mental illness of the person in question. The clients, as they are usually called, would require some support from their families. So your task would be to handle clients and their families independently under the guidance of your supervisors or the counselor in charge of the agency S. These are some of the spaces which I wanted to highlight to you for your own understanding of what learning spaces are available to students in the fieldwork setting. In this particular agency setting, the 5 broad areas where the student could work and learn from, and for which the student would be required to be pre-prepared, are 1. What is mental illness? What is mental health? And how is it classified? What are the signs and symptoms of different forms of mental health concerns? 3rd, how is detailed clinical history taken? So what are the interview techniques in question? 4th, what are the therapeutic modes in operation which are utilized by counselors and psychiatrists? What are the rehabilitation processes in place which are utilized by multidisciplinary teams of whom the social worker is a member? All these aspects would require that you be prepared with certain broad-based information and then get ready to become part of the multidisciplinary team. 3 different case studies have been highlighted to you to enable you to give you an overview of the learning spaces available. The 4th case study speaks of an area wherein the students have been placed in departments which work on issues of domestic violence, matrimonial disputes, and those related to dowry demands. There are certain field action projects which have been instituted by certain schools of social work which have these as special cells. These are very sensitive areas of learning, and students need to keep in mind the various principles that they have learnt in the classroom, including controlled emotional involvement, right to self-determination, acceptance of the client and the client's situations, and non-judgmental attitude while dealing with such situations. It would also need that you rely on other members in the team, including lawyers, advocates, counselors, and police personnel, all of whom contribute to their own judgments and bring their own expertise to solving the problem. You will learn from them, and it also provide you an efficient learning space for growth as a professional. While speaking of the various agency settings and the learning spaces in the placement settings, you would also need to understand that there are formal learning spaces and not so formal learning spaces. Field placement settings, when linked with daily activities, need to be self-directed, as has been stated in another module, but it also needs to be reinforced here that sometimes these spaces are unstructured, and therefore the experience that you gain from them is much more worthwhile. Informal and unplanned learning may also take place within the more formal and institutional contexts. For example, between students and other staff members, between students and clients, and sometimes between students and community leaders as well. Also, when working in a multidisciplinary team, sometimes students interact with other professionals and other co-workers and learn from them. Consequently, it needs to be understood that informal learning is also a sort of experiential learning, which enables students to acquire the necessary knowledge and values of the profession, but the skills definitely need to be learned as competencies to be practiced in the real world of practice. As students learn to recognize the informal processes of learning, and especially those which are related to professional social work values and ethics, you will also begin to learn that they reflect critically and ethically about your own personal experiences on which you can build, on which you can transfer to other situations later in your professional life. It is essential to analyze and understand that the agency's contribution in preparing a trained social worker goes beyond a willingness to merely accept students for concurrent fieldwork or for block fieldwork. It is the quality of the program which is offered in these agencies which affects what each student learns. The student learns that the professional service must be geared to the policies of the agency but must also operate within the organizational structure and its mandate. Therefore, student learning must be directed towards understanding the context of engagement in the field, towards understanding the core practice areas, and towards cultivating the skills necessary for field practice. In this process, you would need to develop effective listening skills, careful observation, purposeful participation in the work that is assigned to you by the agency, appropriate intervention, interaction with co-workers, interaction with the agency staff, and also interaction with the community and its leaders. Since students acquire knowledge on different social issues and experience using different social work practice methods, it helps them to enhance their ability to deal with multiple identities which people have. Students need to accept and develop that there could be need for purposeful interventions, need to develop skills of analysis, and also need to develop skills for mobilizing resources both within the community and for the agency. Sometimes this learning occurs from the interactions between an individual and the environment, which means that individual behavior and environment interact in complex ways and both impact each other. The environment influences the individual student learner as well as the individual student learner influences the environment. The third essential space, known as supervision, is a space where teaching learning takes place. Supervision is a method of teaching students the art of practice of effective social work. It is the guiding process in the profession when the student is enabled to put theoretical knowledge into practice and the supervisor is able to guide the student to utilize and apply this knowledge in the field. It enhances and contributes to the development of the student's professional ability. It is the supervisory process which enriches the student's fieldwork practice and learning experiences. It helps develop students' personal competencies, including individual aptitude to the field and to social issues. This engagement provides an opportunity to students to practice the skills of the profession in a reflective mode and through a critical thinking process. It is with the help of the supervisor that the student anchors the theory in practice and becomes engaged in the process, acquiring the professional skills. What the supervisor is able to accomplish depends to a large extent on the learning potential of the adult learner, which is the student. Orientation followed by engagement with tasks are all complementary in the process of learning. The student not only learns about the agency's structure and functioning, how it develops and whom it serves, but also understands the policies and procedure the agency applies. The student learns that social work is a process which is long drawn, slow but sure. Learning begins when the student tries to understand the concept and in this process may lose enthusiasm. It is here that the supervisor plays an effective role to enable the student to continue in a determined and innovative way. Even if the student resists some of the activities which the agency may share with them, it becomes essential to engage with these activities for one's own learning. Some of the agency settings have been used as case studies to explain to you the learning spaces. The outreach program has also been used as an example to enable you to understand a different kind of setting. One needs to understand that working in the community requires that the student utilize the opportunity to meet people from diverse backgrounds and learn about their challenges and reach out to help them as per their need. At times, the supervisor may not have an answer to all the problems or issues which may arise, but would be a partner in the process of solving problems along with the student learner. The student would need to learn about the importance of developing a knowledge base and bringing a creative approach towards any challenges which are faced in the field. In supervision, as has been mentioned before, the student will be given assignments which will include what the student will be doing in the field, the task that he or she will be undertaking, and what learning will be expected during placement. It is during this exercise and through this exercise that the student learns about the agency's mandate, its method and procedures, whether it's a service delivery organization, it works for advocacy or does promotional and preventive work. Engaging in the field, the students get an opportunity to learn and unlearn. In maybe beginning, may be difficult for the student to acknowledge this process of unlearning. But as the student gains the knowledge and also acquires skills, he or she is able to also utilize the guidance of the supervisor to move ahead in the learning plan. Some of the learning spaces, of course, as have been mentioned in some other module as well, are individual conferences and group conferences. Other than that, one important aspect of learning is the time diary. The concurrent fieldwork or the block fieldwork placement both take into account the need to maintain a daily log of the fieldwork activities. These require that short notes be prepared on a daily basis for remembering, for guidance, for teaching learning, and for evaluation of the performance of the student. It also takes into account the time utilized by the student in the field. This could be referred to while writing detailed recordings. It is mandatory requirement for all schools and departments of social work that students maintain a time diary. Followed by maintaining a time diary is the need for undertaking what is called a process record. Process recording is basically a written record of an interaction with an individual, a group, a community, or a stakeholder in the field. It is a channel of communication basically between the student and the supervisor. The process record provides an opportunity to the student to organize and present information, also to note the observations made in the field, to reflect on what has happened in the field, and to take action in a systematic manner. It is an important element that the process aspect of the various stages of ongoing learning be recorded and the student be able to connect the learning both to the own self and to the curriculum which has been designed for fieldwork. It is through record writing the student enhances his or her documentation skills as well. The other important aspect of learning which is currently being practiced in some schools of social work are the fieldwork seminars, which are conducted by the faculty and the center coordinators to enable the students to learn how to present their work, to share their fieldwork experiences, to discuss the challenges which they have faced in the field with their peers, and to learn from others who have been placed in different organizations but in a similar thematic area. These seminars help students to develop their art of presentation, enable them to gain confidence, and also enable them to move ahead in the fieldwork spaces. Connecting with each other plays an extremely important role, and all these learning spaces provide students with the ability to empower themselves and to grow as a professional. To summarize this module, one would need to say that one should not underestimate the importance of learning spaces in the field. The nature and scope for student learning is immense, and students are encouraged to utilize these spaces. The agency, placement, the fieldwork setting, and supervision all provide learning spaces for a student learner. Whether they are individual meetings with supervisors, group meetings at the agency, or time diary or process recordings, all of these have immense value for the student to learn from. Attending regular fieldwork seminars also enhances student learning and enables them to connect their theoretical inputs with their practice experiences. I hope you have enjoyed and understood this module, and that you would also refer to the e-text and the references which are mentioned at the end of the text. I look forward to further discussion with you. Thank you very much.